Hi everyone, today it gives me great pleasure to introduce Al Danenberg. Al is a periodontist who's been in practice for more than 44 years, and he became interested in ancestral nutrition and lifestyle many years ago, I think, long before it was popular, I think. And he started including those principles in the health of his patients. And I first met Al in 2017 when we both completed the Chris Kresser ADAPT training for functional medicine practitioners. And he's just told me that Chris interviewed him recently, so that should be available on Chris's podcast in a couple of months. Within a short space of time of finishing that ADAPT program, Al had published his first book called Crazy Good Living, which was based on ancestral living and lifestyle. And we'll put the links to that book in the show notes for everybody. And then very sadly, in 2018, we got the news that Al was diagnosed with cancer and had a short time to live. And yet it's 2020 and he's going really strong. And today he's going to share that story with us and tell us what he did and give us some of his gems of wisdom. So thanks for coming, Al. And
it is such a pleasure. And we're halfway around the world from each other, which is like amazing to me. But I'm always amazed with high tech. You know, being 73 years old, it's amazing that I can turn a computer on, but I can, and I even know how to use Zoom. So what else is there, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, my story is interesting. And if you want to get bored, I'm going to tell you about it. So I was we actually can go back when I was 59 years old. I had a stroke, and I was not a healthy guy, and I didn't know why I had a stroke. My conventional physicians saved my life, put me on 7 medications to take for the rest of my life. And I really didn't like that idea. And that's when I started to investigate what lifestyle and diet was really about. Now, I had been practicing periodontics for a long time because now I started practicing, I think, in 1974. So 74, 76, whatever that is, that's a long time ago. So I've been doing a lot, had a stroke at the age of 59. And then my doctors had no idea why I had a stroke. And they said, just eat healthier and live a healthier lifestyle. And that was nonsense talk. It didn't mean anything. So I went to organizations that I thought could help me understand what's going on. So the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, and the American Cancer Society. I thought these organizations would have a better lifestyle and diet that I could follow that would be healthy. And I kind of followed their diet and did what they suggested. But let's fast forward from the age of 59 to 66. I basically, when I started this, I was 5'7", like a short guy. I weighed about 183, 185 pounds, a little stocky maybe, and on 7 medications. Once I was 66 years old, I was basically the same weight, maybe 180, still on 7 medications, still following the diets that these organizations recommended. Now, I found a course at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health at the age of 66. And this course was a course for healthcare professionals on nutrition. And I thought this was going to be really the essence to summarize everything I was learning and confirm that I was doing everything right. So it was a 5-day course. I took the course, marvelous course, unbelievable, about paleo or primal nutrition and lifestyle, which are terms I never understood at that point. And I learned that I was doing basically everything wrong. An awakening. So when the course was over, 5 days later, I called my wife because I'm traveling back to Charleston, where I live, Charleston, South Carolina. And when I get home, I said, you know, I'd like to make some changes. My wife and I bumped heads a little bit. And she said, okay, I'll give you 30 days. And so right away, we cleared out all the foods that were not paleo foods. And we cleared out the foods from the refrigerator, the freezer, the cupboard, put them in 7 bags that we took to the food bank. We had no food in the house. So we now started to learn how to cook and eat and shop for healthy foods. We would be buying wild-caught fish and pastured grain-fed beef, and we were eating now vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds that were all organic, and we're learning how to buy that. So I was 66 years old, starting to eat that way, and within 2 years, I was off all 7 medications completely, and I lost over 35 pounds. Amazing. Now, I wasn't trying to lose weight, but when you eat healthy, you know, hormones rebalance, the body does what it does, and all that excess fat disappears, which was fantastic. And because of this, and the way and the knowledge I was gaining, I then got several certifications: certified functional medicine practitioner, certified primal health coach with Mark Sisson's program, you know, the ADAPT program with Chris Kresser. All of that helped me really get educated, and I started to introduce that lifestyle and diet change in the treatment for periodontal disease, which is what I treat as a periodontist. And the patients that accepted what I was telling them had phenomenal response. And as a matter of fact, active gum disease, which is not severe yet, is easily treated with changing the diet and lifestyle without any clinical intervention in the mouth. So we were getting really nice results, and I was quite excited. I was lecturing and speaking around the country and doing consultations with Skype, and now I even do Zoom. But in April of 2018, and I really considered myself the senior poster boy for healthy living. And so I was speaking at a meeting called Paleo FX in Austin, Texas. It was April of 2018, and I was traveling from Charleston to Texas. I have to transfer planes in a large airport in Atlanta, and generally I take time to walk from concourse to concourse, and I carry my luggage on my shoulder, and that's what I was doing, and my shoulder got sore for some reason. Never did that before. Got to Austin, did my seminar, got back home, and the soreness really didn't go away. And then it started to go into my back. This is in April or so of 2018, and then it moved from my back to my chest, and I was getting annoyed, and finally, being hard-headed as I am, I finally saw my physician in August of 2018. And I went to my physician, I said, you know, this soreness is still there. I don't know what's going on. And he said, yeah, you got a soreness. And I said, duh, yeah, that's why I'm here. Do something for me. So he ordered some blood work, the general CBC and some blood chemistries, and also a C-reactive protein. And all the blood work came back basically normal, within the normal ranges, except the C-reactive protein, it was a little high, and generally I was running very, very low for the C-reactive protein. And that basically, as you know, is a biomarker for some kind of systemic inflammation. Doesn't mean it's acute, doesn't tell if it's a chronic, doesn't tell where it's coming from, just the liver is throwing out this protein because there is inflammation. So he says, let's do an MRI to figure out what's going on. We have the MRI. He calls me after the MRI is read by the radiologist, and he says, do you want to come into the office or do you want to talk on the phone? I said, how bad could it be? Let's talk on the phone. And he said, did you fall down some steps? Did somebody beat you up? I said, Bobby, what are you talking about? I had a bag on my shoulder and probably tore a ligament. He said, I see a vertebral compression fracture. I see 2 cracked ribs. I see a soft tissue mass on the side of your spine, and you have a hairline crack in your pelvis. Then he gets very serious and he says, I would be very concerned if I were you. And I think that you either have leukemia, lymphoma, or multiple myeloma. All 3 doors I don't want to open. These are cancers. Here I am, I'm thinking I'm the poster boy at 71 years old of a picture of health, and you're telling me I have cancer? That's a shock. So he says, let's get you with an oncologist. This is a good guy I know. We'll do some more tests. So I then have what's called a PET scan, which is a CT scan where they inject a radio active glucose solution into your vein so that if there's cancer cells, they love glucose, so they'll suck up the glucose and the x-ray will glow where all the cancer cells are. So I had that. I had a biopsy of the soft tissue and a few other blood work to show or discover cancer cells. So it turns out my wife, my 2 adult children, and I are in the oncologist's office, and he goes over all these tests. And I have cancer, and it's called IgA kappa light chain multiple myeloma. It's moderately to aggressively coursing through my body. And the radiologist identified holes in my bone. And generally when you have lytic lesions, part of the diagnosis is and 1 lytic lesion or 2 lytic lesions or 5 lytic lesions. Basically, there were so many, he said, innumerable lytic lesions, meaning that I have so many holes in my bones that they're very fragile, and that's why I had these pathological fractures of my ribs and my pelvis and my vertebra. So we get serious, and my oncologist says, we need to start you on a series or a cocktail of chemotherapy drugs immediately. We'll probably do some radiation because I couldn't even breathe deeply. The pain was so intense in my sternum. And then maybe stem cells, but probably wouldn't work for me. And I unfortunately would have 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 months to live if I did nothing. That's another shocker. So he's telling me that this is an incurable disease. Chemotherapy is going to put me in remission. While I'm in remission, my quality of life is probably going to be compromised. And then if I go in remission, it'll be great. And maybe for a few years, I'll live relatively normally and the disease will come back. They'll have to do more chemotherapy with more caustic drugs because the first series of chemotherapy wouldn't be effective any longer. And then this would happen over and over until no chemotherapy would work. As he said, stem cell therapy would probably not work in my condition, and therefore I would die eventually from the complications of multiple myeloma. I would just have longer to live. Well, I'm somewhat of a realist. I was never in denial, and I understood what he was saying, and I understood the most important thing, and that is I have an incurable cancer. My life expectancy, if I do nothing, is 3 to 6 months. And I explained to him that I totally have to reject chemotherapy. It makes no sense to me to decrease the quality of my life just to live longer, but I'm going to live in a somewhat of a debilitated state. I want to have as high a quality of life as I can and then just drop dead, if that's possible. So I had radiation therapy just for my chest because the pain was so severe. That took care of it. It didn't solve the disease, just took care of the pressure on my lung rib cage. So that was okay. Like I said, I rejected chemotherapy and I told him I needed to do some research about whatever alternative therapy was available. So I looked into some alternative physicians and a lot of research on PubMed and came up with some thoughts. Now, I've created my unconventional cancer protocols and starting immediately then, but I've tweaked them significantly till today. But in the beginning, I was doing a tremendous number of supplements that were recommended by an integrative physician, like 60 to 70 capsules a day, absolutely ridiculous, disgusting to take. And even though a lot of them were just synthetic, this integrative physician didn't know anything about diet. I mean, it was the wrong way to go, but that's what I did in the beginning along with other things. Eventually, I just dropped all of that. I just completely eliminated that and went to other things. But basically, I have several segments of my protocols that we'll talk about in detail that I followed until now. And I had some setbacks. My basic setback, I lived very well. My chemistries were basically stable, never got worse, never got better. I was never in remission, but I had some setbacks because of some pathological fractures, but it was not terrible until August of 2019. So now it's beyond where I was supposed to live. And I was brushing my teeth in my bathroom. This is, again, August of 2019, about a year after my diagnosis. And my feet are planted on the ground. I'm brushing and flossing my teeth. And I know I have fragile bones because I've had a couple of fractures anyhow. But I didn't know and understand how fragile they were. So I twisted to the left just to throw my dental floss into the trash can. So I'm twisting about 90 degrees to the left. My feet are planted on the floor. I'm not turning my feet as I twist. I'm assuming this is what happened. As I twist, my right femur snaps in half and I collapse to the ground. As I collapse to the ground, I'm hitting hard ceramic tile. That's not a pleasant thing. And I break 2 more ribs and break my right arm, my right humerus in half also. So I am writhing in pain. I can't move. I'm screaming. My wife is in the other room. She comes running. She's an RN. Doesn't really matter. She's an RN though. And obviously there's a tremendous amount of motion here. And she calls EMS. They get to the house very quickly. It's very difficult for them to negotiate into my bathroom to get me into a gurney because I can't stand. I'm in such pain. But they get me in there and they get me to the hospital. And I must tell you, Sue, I am ready to die. I mean, and I want to die. I know that at this point, the quality of my life could never be good anymore because of these huge fractures, and I've outlived my prognosis. So I get to the hospital, they fix my leg because of the fracture, I was in danger of rupturing the femoral artery. I would have bled to death. So they fix my right femur. They put some plates and screws in, and they don't do anything with my arm. I kind of reject any physical therapy, and they send me to a hospital to die. So I'm ready. I am absolutely ready. I am drugged with narcotics. I have a catheter. I have to use a bedpan. It's amazingly demeaning, and I just want to die. And I wished I died. So I go to hospice, and this is the beginning of April 2019. So it was a very short period of time from my fall. And then there was a hurricane coming to Charleston in that first week of April, and September. And the hurricane is moving only at 1 mile an hour, but it has 185 mile an hour wind. So it's very destructive, and Charleston is the center of this, going to be the center of this hurricane, and the hospital is ordered to evacuate. Now they have no place to send me. My wife, being an RN, she scrambled to get a hospital bed in the house, so they transport me to the house into the hospital bed. Now the hurricane hits, the power goes out for 13 or so hours. Hospital beds are electric, so it doesn't move any longer. I'm immobile, so I'm immobile in an immobile bed. There's no electricity. It's over 90 degrees outside. It's hot. It's sticky. There's no air conditioning, obviously. There's no radio. There's no TV. It's miserable. The hurricane goes, the power comes back on, and I am in hospice, still ready to die. Now, my wife is such a strong pillar for me. And she basically said, look, you were a survivor all the way up to this point. You did so well. Now you had this accident and you've given up. You are not a victim. You need to get back on your protocols, and you need to get your head together. And she didn't say it in a nice tone, but she forced me to open my eyes. And she got a physical therapist in to help me with things, and a nurse to help me with things in the bed. And eventually the catheter comes out. I start getting out of bed, and I'm using a walker, and I'm starting to rally. So I revoke hospice, and I'm really improving significantly. And I actually can walk outside a little bit with a walker. So the next month, October, I go to see my oncologist. He's kind of impressed, and he says there's some new immunotherapy drugs that have just been approved by the FDA for your particular type of multiple myeloma. Let's talk about it. Now, these are not chemotherapy drugs. These are human-derived monoclonal antibodies that support my immune system to help kill the very specific malignant plasma cells that I have. So I start that, and that's part of my protocol. That's one of the things that I continue to do. So I'm continuing to get better, and I'm changing my diet. So in the beginning of the diagnosis, I went from a paleo diet to a paleo autoimmune diet to cut out nightshades and things that could stimulate an autoimmune reaction, that it would be normal for paleo diet, but not the paleo autoimmune diet. And now I did some more investigating along the way. In January of 2020, I started a carnivore diet, which is an animal-based diet. It's not animal meat only, it's animal meat, but it's the fat, more importantly, the fat and the organs and all the collagenous material, but no plants, no plant food whatsoever. And there's some phenomenal research that we can talk about with severe chronic disease patients as well as incurable cancer patients getting not only good results, but getting cured with this kind of a diet. Most of the research is in Budapest, Hungary, where they've had more than 4,000 patients successfully treated in this way. So I've done that research. I love the concept. There's nothing, no failure here. If I go on it, it can only do good, not bad. So that's what I started, and that's what I do today. So in May of this year, May 8th, 2020, my oncologist just wanted to see how my cancer cells were doing. I'm doing well. Chemistries are doing fairly well. Let's see where the cancer cells are. So I have another PET scan. So I had the first PET scan when I was diagnosed. I had another PET scan in June of 2019 that was still showing lots of cancer cells. And this PET scan from head to toe was May 8th. And my oncologist calls me at the evening at home and says, put your wife on speakerphone. And he's reading the pathology report and the radiology report. And the radiology report says, no active cancer cells in the entire body. Now, I said, George, read that again. Read that again, because that's a major statement. And he was rather surprised. I could tell he was excited just because of his voice. He had no idea that this was going to happen the way it was. So at that moment, I'm kind of floating several inches off the ground, and my wife is crying, obviously. But the reality is I'm not cured and I'm not in remission. So I still have some malignant proteins that are flowing through my body. And I think that's going to work out with my very supportive immune system. And maybe it's all part of the cells that are dying. I mean, there's so many cancer cells that are there, of course. So I am very encouraged and I feel fantastic. My energy level is amazing until maybe 6 to 7 o'clock at night, and then I kind of conk out. But other than that, I am really feeling good. And for the most part, I'm following my protocols, and I'm a happy camper.
Wow, that is
That's an interesting story. I mean,
it's a
it's
wonderful
where I am.
story. Yeah, it's a very touching story as well.
Yeah. Cancer
Yeah.
is a touching subject because it's so emotionally hyped. You don't know what you don't know, number one. When you are diagnosed, it's a blow. And then you don't know who to go to. And if you're only seeing one person, they say it's my way or the highway, and you're scared to death to do anything else. So most people just succumb to, okay, do it. And I didn't do it that way.
Well, I think one of your real strengths, which, I've been aware of since I first, sort of met you, was your ability to research. I mean, you've got an incredible work ethic and you have an amazing ability to research and, break down pretty complex information and extract good information from it. So that's really valuable, and that's super valuable for the rest of us, because you can sort of dissect that and share it with everybody else.
It's actually my passion. I love delving in. I'm kind of geeky that way, but I have to understand something for me to do something. And the more I delved into alternative therapy, and I don't like the term alternative, it means that it's not really the right thing or it's too far out there. It's just therapy that is working, but it's not yet accepted in the conventional world of medicine. And I'm not doing therapies that are out there that one person or group says it's the best and nobody has ever been able to duplicate. I'm looking for duplicable research that says this is working here and it's working there, and now maybe it's not accepted in conventional medicine, but I can accept it because I see the science and it makes sense to me.
And
So that's where I am.
The Budapest research is extremely valuable. I think, did you say there was over 4,000 people now?
Yes, well, they report over 4,000 patients as of, I think 2 years ago, so I'm sure it's even more, and they started in 2011. So the clinic is called Paleomedicina Clinic, and I'll send you that link in English,
Thank you.
obviously.
Yep.
But they have, their website is in all languages, but, and they have blogs, and they have medical reports that they've published, and it's all there. You can read all that information, and it's relatively unbiased. They're basically selling their knowledge, and what their knowledge is not a whole bunch of expensive therapies. It's basically this, what they call the Paleolithic ketogenic diet, which is a very strict carnivore diet. One of the strict parts of it is a fat to protein gram ratio of 2 to 1 or more, and that's really where the biology improves with the metabolism of cancer, and heavily on the organs as well as collagenous material, not heavy on the muscle protein, and that's what I do, and it's an easy diet, and it's not a problem. And I think it's doing quite well. Most people lose quite a bit of weight when they're on a diet like this, only because the body just starts to break down fat deposits within itself for ketones and energy, not the glucose. And this is part of the metabolic dysfunction of cancer and the mitochondrial dysfunction of cancer. You know, there are theories, and none of them have been 100% proven, but there are theories that it's all genetically derived. And the sad thing is, a lot of people, especially women, when they find out that they have one bad gene or 2 bad genes for cancer, they immediately run out and have a mastectomy just to prevent cancer or whatever. And that's a philosophy that maybe works for some people. But interestingly, the genetic predisposition to cancer is overwhelmingly subdued if we understand the epigenetics, and that means the things in our environment like diet and lifestyle and the gut and those other things that we can put into play to support the immune system that deregulates or de-emphasizes those cancer genes, so they don't ever express themselves. And therefore, even if you have a gene that potentially could cause you severe cancer, it may never express itself because you have controlled it by diet and lifestyle changes. And that's the metabolic concept, as well as the mitochondrial dysfunction concept, means that cancer really is not started by a defective DNA and then it creates cancer. It tends to be, in this particular theory, tends to be something damaging the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell to start with, the battery of the cell. Something is changing, and the metabolism of energy, or the creation of energy, is changing from the normal oxidative phosphorylation to a some kind of a generation of energy of glycolysis, and it's not efficient, yet they use lots of these cells use lots of glucose to do that. And if that is corrected, maybe the cancer would never start, and if it's not corrected, then the DNA is affected, therefore the cancer cell never dies and it grows, and a lot of strange things happen with cancer cells. Everybody has cancer cells, and everybody's cancer cells generally either die by apoptosis, which means they can commit self-suicide because they know there's chemicals that are reacting to the cell when it goes haywire, and it kills itself off so it doesn't become malignant and overgrow. Or the immune system sends out macrophages, which are these phagocytes that just eat up bad stuff, and they eat up the cancer cells. So one of these two things are happening in the normal body all the time. But something happened in my body, and I do believe that it started when I was in dental school,
Yes,
44 years ago.
I've heard you talk about that. Do you want to share that? That was about the mercury.
Yeah. You see, cancer doesn't start today and then it manifests tomorrow. You don't have one cancer cell going crazy today and you have lesions tomorrow. It just doesn't work that way. It takes time. Cells have to multiply and your body is still trying to kill them off, but some of them are just multiplying too fast. So what I think happened in dental school is very unique to dentists. And there is actually a paper that proves this or shows that the male dentists have a much higher prevalence of cancer, especially multiple myeloma. And here's why. In dental school, 4 years of dental school, 2 years of graduate school to become a periodontist, that was back in the early 1970s. And I was exposed to a constant low-grade ionizing radiation, which is dental x-ray machine. Now, in my clinic, in the dental school where I was kind of a unique situation where there were 4 dental students that shared one x-ray machine. And we had like 120 dental students in the class. So there's a lot of x-ray machines. And I'm not sure that I was protected correctly. And you don't know when the x-rays are floating around that you might get exposed to because you don't smell them, you don't see them, you don't feel them, you know, they're invisible. So when the machines are turning on, there's a little red light that you know that's there and it may be buzzing, but you may be walking by one and who knows how much radiation you got over a period of time because it's accumulating in the body. So this is for 6 continuous years. And in addition to that, in dental school, we learned how to put mercury fillings into teeth. These are amalgams. Well, mercury is a highly toxic heavy metal. It is neurotoxic. We mix the mercury with a powder, and then the excess free mercury, which are beautiful little silvery balls that you can play with in your hands. And we did that like kids play with Play-Doh, but we would all throw the excess mercury on the floor of all things, and it vaporizes. Who knew that? Who understood that? So the dental schools throughout the country, probably throughout the world at that time, were probably the most toxic buildings you could enter. Everybody was exposed to that mercury vapor. Students, faculty, everybody.
I remember as a kid going to the dental nurse and we played with it.
I know.
You know, and it made these awesome little balls and you could chase them around.
I know. So doing this for 6 years, getting into my skin, getting into my lungs, only one cell has to become malignant to form eventually a full-blown case down the road. So one plasma cell in my body didn't work out well. And I think it was in those days, 40 plus years ago. And that one cell grew and grew until it overwhelmed my immune system to exacerbate in April of 2018, cracking my ribs and creating pain. And who knows how long before that it was actually doing it, but I didn't have problems yet. So this is why I think I have cancer, and it's not because I didn't eat well when I started eating well. You know, sadly enough, I was under the impression, the misunderstanding that, okay, I'm going to eat well. Maybe within 4 to 6 years of eating well, I will cure everything that's going on in my body. Not so. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, you can get better, but you're not going to do that much curative work for that many years of damage. It takes a long time. So all of the things that I've done with my unconventional cancer therapies have supported my metabolism with my ideal diet. I do stuff to really improve my gut with spore-based probiotics. I use a couple companies that are phenomenal, Microbiome Labs. I do quite a number of products from them, and another company called Enviromedica that has a very unique spore-based probiotic that has actually some immune support that stimulates the certain specific innate cells of the innate immune system. And and then other products that support my epithelial barrier in my gut. So I really want to get, and I do have a very healthy gut. And then I want to support my cells, and I use pulse electromagnetic field therapy that actually enhances the ion transport between cells and actually helps to improve the mitochondria that I'm sure are dysfunctional because of my cancer. So it's a mat that is in my bed. It's like a yoga mat that I use. It's called, it's from a company called Pure Wave Now. I get it from the United States, but it's imported from Germany. PureWaveNow.com is the importer in the United States. And I lay on this mat and it turns on and off in the morning and in the evening. And I do it a couple times during the day, different settings that I have for my cancer. And I think that's supporting the health of my cells. So all of this together, I believe, is doing the great job that it's doing. And here I am.
Yeah.
73 years old,
Yeah.
feeling fantastic, and I don't think I look like a dying cancer patient.
No, you certainly don't look or sound like a dying cancer patient.